Hi guys. As you know, we've been making some improvements to our main workshop. At least I think they're improvements right now. A year from now I may wonder what the heck I was thinking and rip everything out again. But I'm just doing my part to keep the Asian plywood industry afloat. Like when we built this miter saw workstation in the last 3 parts of our shop vlog series. If you didn't catch yesterday's wrap-up video where I explained why on earth I made it the way I made it, you should definitely check that out. But now it's time to forge ahead with the next project. And what is that project? Well, I gave you a hint in part 3 of the series. I will give you a hint. Here it is. Some people thought that my drumming fingertips meant we were going to build a workbench, and they couldn't have been more wrong. The real clue was in my words. If you haven't figured it out yet, you don't watch enough of our videos. Now, I figured that people who watch a lot of our videos would immediately notice that the background was different. But I suppose it's possible that regular viewers no longer even notice the background. Anyway, I'm sorry to get all cryptic on you, but the truth is we're going to rebuild our hand tool wall. And in the process, I'll show you some clever ideas that you can apply to your own shop fixtures, including pull-out tool holders and secret compartments. Now let's get started. First things first, everything has to be packed up. The hand tool section will be shrinking a bit to make room for the sharpening and sanding stations. But other than some of the doubles, I'm not getting rid of any of my tools until the day my wife pries them from my cold dead fingers, which may be Monday, depending on how hard I hit the buffet this weekend. If you're one of the guys who gives me crap in the comments about hoarding tools, all I can say is there is a fine line between collecting and hoarding, and I don't think I've crossed it. It's true, I don't get to work with all these tools as much as I like. Some of them I've never used, but it's not as if I've cornered the market on hand tools. There are plenty of them out there for you. Most of these aren't even close to being rare. I saved many of them from rot and mold in barns and basements, or worse yet, being coated in lacquer and put up on a mantelpiece as some rustic decoration in the house of someone who has no idea what they are. I may not build much furniture with them these days, but I do use them to teach others about the history of our craft. I don't know, I think that's important. Remember this tool cabinet? It was featured in some of our earliest videos.
It's time to make a tool cabinet. I drew something up, and I call it the ultimate tool cabinet.
Wow, those videos sucked. The cabinet was supposed to have swing-out tool holders inside and doors on the front. I tore out the swing-outs, and I never made the doors. It's been floating around the shop ever since, and now it's just headed out to the road. Don't worry, I'm not wasting all that white oak and walnut. Within 5 minutes of putting that out to the road, someone was already knocking on my door asking for it. I even went out and helped him load it. That's how nice I am. Most of the walls in the shop are covered with old cedar siding that came out of a Vancouver mill about 120 years ago. What you see is the unfinished backside. I love the rainbow color and I hate to cover it up, but the new fixtures we're building are going to take up this entire wall. I'm building a set of 3 shelving units, and that means a lot of parts. I used SketchUp to decide how to efficiently divide the plywood. Then I had them broken down into larger but manageable sections on the store's panel saw. As I cut out the smaller parts in my own shop, I mark them off on the plans by changing their color. And then I finally write the dimensions on each part so I can find them as I need them later. I'm pretty sure Duncan Fife managed his plywood the same way. This was the first time I got to use my new miter saw. I had to cut these big pieces in 2 passes, lining up the second cut as best I could to get a clean curve. Just in case, I left a little extra room and I cleaned the edges up on the table saw once they were small enough to use a sled. This project isn't all plywood. I'm drawing lines down the center of a bunch of strips of pine so I can mount the drawer slides. Drawer slide mounting is all about centers. The holes are down the center of the slides. I draw my line down the center of where I want my slide located, and I align that with the center of the holes. Then I use a center punch to mark where the screws are going to go. Of course, my punch is packed in a box somewhere, so I use a 150-year-old pair of dividers to mark the holes, and then a newfangled lithium-ion power drill to drive the screws, and I see no contradiction in that. 6 sheets of plywood, 8 full extension drawer slides. This project's getting pretty expensive, and I haven't even had a cold one yet. I used a pencil to lay out all the locations for the shelves and the drawer slides in the side of the cabinets. This took some figuring because I had to measure some of the tools to make sure they would fit on the shelves as designed, and it was a tight fit in some cases. Finally, I mounted the other half of each drawer slide on the lines on my cabinet sides and I said a silent prayer to make sure everything would line up right, which is another secret to mounting door slides. I'm using pocket screw joinery again, and this is where I noticed a big mistake, which I immediately blamed on someone else. Remember the pine plywood that I used for the miter saw workstation? This was actually pretty nice stuff. It worked out so nicely that I went back to get some more, but I went to a different Home Depot. And the clerk there gave me 5-layer plywood instead of 7-layer plywood. 5-layer pine plywood is construction grade, which is a nice way of saying it's total crap. I'd already noticed a lot of voids that weren't in the 7-layer plywood as I was cutting out my pieces, but the real issues came when I started boring the pocket holes. The end grain layers crumble near the edge, especially when the screw heads compress it. This causes the long grain layers to split too, and you really sometimes have nothing for your screw to hold on to. What you see here is very mild. Some of it was so bad I had to rebore the pocket holes further from the edge and use longer screws. It was a mess, but I made it work. I wonder if the Shakers ever had this problem when they were working with pocket screws. These units are meant to straddle other tools, so I couldn't put bottom panels on them. And of course, the cheap plywood was making it look bow-legged. I added some stretchers to the back to spread the side panels apart, and I think it helped. At least no one will wonder if my cabinet spent all day riding a horse. Here's what goes under one of the two cabinets. It's my Torment Cabinet, and I love this thing. It's incredibly well built, which means it weighs a ton. It was delivered on a semi-truck when I got it several years ago, and to this day it is the smallest item I have ever had delivered to my shop in an 18-wheeler. It's going beneath one of the wall units, and the Torment machine will be on one of the slide-out shelves above it. If you're wondering why I attached drawer slides to wooden strips, here's your answer. These are the pull-out shelves, and I needed them to be as low profile as possible. That means butting the edges of the plywood panels up against the wood strips instead of laying them on top, which would have been more structurally sound. It saved me 3/4 of an inch in height for each slide-out shelf, which I ended up needing when it came down to it. But coupled with the pocket screw issues I was having, it does reduce the strength of the shelves. We'll see how they hold up over time. I can always remake them and cut some rabbets in the pine to help make them stronger. Have you ever assembled a set of these ball bearing drawer slides, and when you get to the end and you have to push hard to get it to go together, all the bearings pop out and fly all over the floor? Yeah, that's happened to me. It's a blast. I built the two outer wall units first because I wasn't sure how far I could put them apart, and that was going to determine the width of the unit in the middle. It turned out that was a very good idea because I had to reduce my design for the middle unit by 1 inch. So I'm glad I waited to cut out all those parts until the two side units were built. Well, this is a good place to stop for today. I'm tired, and this cold one's not going to drink itself. For more great tips, tricks, and tutorials designed to make you a better woodworker, check out Stumpy Nubs Woodworking Journal. You can read and subscribe for free at stumpynubs.com.